Hi, this is Jim Lange, and with this video we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of the death of the Stretch IRA, what is a Stretch IRA, what is the current law, and what is the proposed law. Alright, so first let's forget about dying and let's take a look at the minimum required distribution rules. And so what you can see here is we have a 67-year-old who has $1 million in their IRA or retirement plan. And if you follow my typical advice, which is don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later, in the accumulation stage, in the distribution stage, and in the estate planning stage, by the way, except for the Roth IRA or the Roth IRA conversion, you should pay taxes later. So if there are other funds available to meet your spending needs, I'm going to say pay taxes later. So you're 67 years old, you have $1 million in your IRA or your retirement plan, and if you have other funds that you can spend, typically, subject to exception, I'm going to say pay taxes later, and just let the money continue to grow income tax deferred. Well, that pattern will continue until you are age 70, technically April 1st of the year following the year you turn 70 and a half, but let's not get into those complications. And at that point, you're going to have to take a minimum required distribution, whether you like it or not. So let's say you say, okay, well, gee, if I have to take it, I'll take it. I don't want to be a tax evader, but I only want to take the minimum. How do I calculate the minimum? Well, you go to publication 590, and there's also a lot of software all over the place on the internet and on our website that will allow you to calculate it. So what you do is you get a factor from publication 590. That factor becomes the divisor. You divide the divisor into the balance as of December 31st of the prior year. So let's say the balance is, let's say 1.1, 1.2 million. The divisor is 27.4. Well, what the heck is 27.4? Well, to oversimplify, the 27.4 factor is the deemed joint life expectancy of you and somebody deemed 10 years younger than you are. So anyway, you get this factor, 27.4, divided into the balance, and then you get your minimum required distribution of the IRA. Now, the 27.4, if you think about it, if it was a 25 factor, that would be exactly 4%. All right, so this is a little bit higher, which means the distribution is a little bit less than 4%. Then what happens the next year? The factor goes down, it's 26.5. So you take 26.5, and by the way, in this example, I'm assuming that you're earning 6%, but the minimum required distribution is a little bit less than 4%, so the IRA is continuing to grow. So you take 26.5 divided by the balance, and you see the minimum required distribution is a little bit higher. Next year you do the same thing, etc., 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 etc. Now, I didn't do anything special, but why does the distribution and the balance and everything turn red when you are 85 years old? Well, I'm sorry, you died. All right, so that's the actuarial life expectancy. So let's assume that you're 67 years old now, and at least according to the actuaries, you'll die at, say, age 85. Well, what happens then? All right, let's assume for discussion's sake that you are married and you have children. So, and let's forget about all the complications of the estate planning and some of the strategies I'm going to be recommending. Most people leave their IRA money to their spouse. All right, so now your spouse, and in this example, I'm assuming your spouse is roughly your age, she'll continue that pattern of taking her life expectancy plus 10, divided by the balance. She'll take the minimum required distribution of, in effect, the spousal rollover IRA, although technically we prefer a trustee-to-trustee transfer. I won't get into that. Then that keeps going until you are both gone. So now, at this point, what we have here is we have, under existing law, we have the minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA, okay? So at this point, let's say that both you and your spouse are gone, or maybe your spouse is still alive, but we're having some money going to the children at the first death. But in either event, we have a non-spousal heir of an inherited IRA. Now, that asset, the inherited IRA, is a special asset, and there's nothing else like it in the tax code. Remember, nobody's paid income taxes on it. They're not allowed to, your heirs or your children are not allowed to roll it into their own IRA, but the last thing we want to do is accelerate income taxes on it and pay taxes all at once. So let's take a look at what we would recommend that your child do when you die with an IRA. We would recommend treating that inherited IRA as a special asset that is subject to minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA. You must start the year after the IRA owner dies. And the way you would calculate the required minimum distribution of the inherited IRA is you would take a life expectancy factor, which is also found in publication 590, but a different table. It's for single beneficiaries. You would take the factor, divide into the balance of the inherited IRA as of December 31st of the prior year. So in this case, we have 24.4 divided by, let's call it 1.2 million, and we get a $48,000 minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA. Then what happens the next year? It goes down to 23.4, and the minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA goes higher and higher and higher. And what's really terrific about this is you're really stretching the heck out of this inherited IRA. Don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later, except for the Roth, the accumulation, distribution. Now I'm actually talking about after death. So that's basically what the law is today. Now, a way to get an even greater stretch IRA is, instead of having a child be the beneficiary, we have a grandchild being the beneficiary. And let's say instead of being born in 1980, let's say that grandchild is born in 2010, and instead of having a 60-year-old inherit the IRA after you're gone, we have a 31-year-old. Same idea, except we have a much longer life expectancy, so we have a smaller minimum required distribution, and over time this will be enormously beneficial. Now, we'll talk about disclaimers later on, and what we are big advocates of is flexible estate plan. But the idea here is the existing law, and the way it has been since I can remember practicing, is heirs would be able to stretch the IRA for many, many years over their lifetimes after death of the IRA owner. Now, what's going to happen under the proposed law, where the Senate Finance Committee voted 26-0, and I think it's just a matter of time, probably 2017, and if not 2018, what they're going to say is, no, your heirs aren't going to be able to stretch the IRA. Subject to exception, and we'll get into the exceptions, they're going to have to pay income tax on the entire IRA within 5 years of your death. Now, in the prior video, I showed that the difference to your child was the difference between, towards the end of your child's life, of being broke or having $2.5 million using certain reasonable assumptions. So this is really a potentially devastating proposal that I think will become law. One of the things I'm doing with this video series is I'm talking about some of the things you can do to protect yourself and protect your family, but this is a little bit of the nitty-gritty explanation of how this would work. So in this example, instead of being able to stretch the IRA over perhaps close to 60 years, the grandchild would have to pay income taxes on the whole thing within 5 years of your death. Again, subject to exception. There actually is an exception for minors, but let's forget about that for a moment. This is a potentially deadly proposed law, and I think that we should be proactive in doing everything that we can to protect our family even before it becomes law. So what I'm going to be suggesting in future videos are things that will be beneficial whether they pass the law or whether they don't. And then we'll also talk about a couple things to do after they pass the law. I hope this is helpful. I urge you to find out more about this. One of the best ways that you can do this is to actually look at our webinar. So we did a 1-hour webinar that we recorded. It is available if you click the link below. That will guide you to a page, and you can find out about listening to the webinar or watching the webinar, and it is all free. And in addition, we have all kinds of bonuses of different books and other very helpful educational aids that will help you, let's say, navigate this treacherous proposed law. Thank you.